twin flames have often been associated with really the romance of the 3D romance, okay? And it's gotten so much like that it got the true genuine reason for the twin flame was lost. And to me, I've always said that the twin flame was this union of two aspects of yourself, okay, that would remember and would desire to form that union again here in 3D to finish the game. That karma is just another way of looking at empathy, and how we have used karma as a way to, and the way that it's been defined. Because if you really go back into the early teachings of karma, it's different the way that it was described, but in the way that it's been interpreted by many others who have led the way. Again, distorted energies. I won't say which kind. I'll leave it up to people to decide. Karma is viewed as a way to hold us back, and keep us conditioned to believe that we're here to fix something that was never broken. Most of the figureheads around spirituality, okay, if are men, okay, and a lot of them are still heavily rooted in religion, and then obviously the divine masculine, which always people get, whenever you say the word masculine, it could raise a lot of eyebrows and make a lot of people twitch, okay, because up until very recently there was really very little clear evidence of a divinity around the masculine. It was mostly a distorted masculine, and in so many different ways. So and the new role is that the male, not the male, but the masculine is there to be the.
Hi, this is Akanksshaa. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. If you resonate with me, please like, comment, and share. Welcome to Multidimensional Soul Podcast and a Talk Show. On this show, we have with us today Franco Romero, who's a returning guest on our podcast. A very
Yay.
welcome.
Very happy to be here.
Yeah, we're absolutely happy to have you back on Multidimensional Soul Podcast and Talk Show. It's an honor to have you again.
Excited to be with you again. Excited to be chatting with you. Excited to be reaching out to your multi-dimensional family, wherever they are at, which I know that I have a few students that watch you and are excited about what you're doing, and told me that I had to say hello to you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yes. So one in particular from the UK that was like, oh, you got to tell her. You got to tell her that I said hi. So, okay.
Okay.
So I did that.
Yeah. Last time when we talked, we covered a lot about your near-death experience. We covered what's happening in terms of energetically in 2024, 2025. And now that we are in 2025, almost mid of 2025, there have been a lot of energetic shifts, timeline splits, and a lot of chaos, a lot of disruptions. A lot is happening.
Yes, I would say so. Yes.
So today we're going to touch upon quite a few things. The first I would love to start with is the dynamics of divine feminine and divine masculine. Now that we have the divine feminine rising in ascension, what is the true role of divine masculine?
All right. So you just want to just jump right into some of the big ones, huh? Okay, I see how this is going to be for the next hour or so. Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to just maybe take a step back, given what you just said, to recognize what is happening right now, and and for some people who may be listening to this conversation, to this interview, there might be some people that say, yeah, I'm feeling these changes happening, but on the surface, there still seems to be a lot of chaos, right? And I know you've interviewed a lot of people and have strong opinions. Mostly, it sounds like most people are relatively in the same sort of boat now, that these things are happening because the energies are truly coming in, are truly making disruptive changes, if you will, or causing disruptiveness to cause changes. And what I feel relative to the question you just asked is that up until very recently, the energy that was really most prevalent coming in was a divine feminine energy. And that is going to stay that way for a while. It's not going to go away anytime soon. It's not going to go away ever, really. But there are various other frequencies, one of which is the divine masculine, which are also coming in, and they just weren't coming in large masses until just recently. And so the way I look at it is that, and I've talked about this, we may have talked about this the last time a little bit, but there's this trinity of frequencies. And it's actually more than just a trinity, but there are three specific frequencies that are really here to have a profound impact on the way that we view ourselves and view the world. And the one is the divine feminine, which everybody seems to have an opinion about, and I want to kind of massage that a little bit. The divine child, okay, and which often gets kind of overlooked here a little bit, but I want to address that as well within the context of the divine masculine and feminine, because that's why that's why it's a trinity. And then obviously the divine masculine, which always people get, whenever you say the word masculine, it could raise a lot of eyebrows and make a lot of people twitch, okay? Because up until very recently, there was really very little clear evidence of a divinity around the masculine. It was mostly a distorted masculine, okay? So I like to just kind of put it within the context of the timeline we're in, okay? These frequencies have come in at different stages, but it's not like one comes in and then the next one comes in and the next one. They come in at various times to influence the way in which we are starting to remember who we are, okay? Early on, back in 2009, 10, 11, and 12, that frequency was a frequency that didn't necessarily always appear this way, but it was a very defined divine child energy, okay? Without getting into all the years in between, I'm just going to say that energy was really there to anchor itself into the grid system, to help us to slowly start remembering who we are without getting in our own way, okay? It was there to soften sort of the analytical process that we like to go through, that we try to have to rationalize everything in some sort of 3D way, and 1 + 1 has to equal 2, but sometimes it doesn't, but in most of this 3D world, we get sold that 1 + 1 = 5, and we accept it. But we try to go through that same rational process with spirituality, and so this energy came in softly at times, to help plant the seeds for us to start remembering softly who we are, okay? And giving us a bit of grace to not be so hard on ourselves when we started to feel differently about our world, Okay. Now, I'm going to say that that hasn't always been the case for everybody. People, when they start to remember who they are, or then when they start to question the whole existence of themselves, or what's here in this world, it gets pretty hard. It gets pretty intense. Okay. But that's what this energy was supposed to do. In 2019, we had a very seismic introduction of the divine child, and that was when we had the epidemic, or the pandemic, excuse me. Okay, the pandemic was there was a huge influx of divine child energy that came in to 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 move some of this heavy energy that had been in place for so long. And I know this is going to sound a little bit odd, but it was done in a very simple manner. Okay. And the simplicity of that manner was that we had a pandemic. Okay. And well, we all know what happened there. You know, everything stopped, everything paused, everyone started to look inward. Slowly and simply and quietly and sometimes playfully and innocently, we started to look inward. Okay. All various frequencies of the child. Okay. But so it's hard for us to kind of look at the child and go, wait a minute, the child had something to do with the pandemic. You got to look at how it came in, how it moved things around in a way that was disruptive, but more gently than, say, a world famine or World War III or things of that nature, which would be total chaos. Okay, total chaos. All right, and so then once that was all in place, once that started moving things around, then it laid the foundation for this big movement of energy that we would start coming into, which was the divine feminine energies, which, as I've said before, can be and should be viewed as part of this thing called the Christ consciousness or the Buddha consciousness, or an awareness, first and foremost, an awareness, okay, which was also part of the child, but an awareness that there's something more about ourselves that we had to recognize, that we aren't who we've been taught to believe we are. We're not beings of fear. We're beings of love. We're beings of compassion. We're beings of caring and nurturing and all of that. Okay. All right, cool. So everybody started to feel into that. And over time, over the last several years, people have been kind of, talking about this, that, and so forth. The thing that has happened a little bit with the divine feminine is that when you get that sense of freedom, that sense of expression that you didn't have maybe before, and I'm going to be really clear about this. We all have all three of those energies, but in the way that this game is designed, it's really kind of coming down almost by gender. Okay. Almost. Meaning that the buttons are being turned on, or switches have been turned on in women to be more activated with the divine femininity, and with men more of their divine masculinity. Okay. And then with both of them, the divine child. Okay. Which is, I love to represent myself as the divine child because I'm kind of a goofy guy. I speak simply and playfully, right? Okay, so I know this is a long-winded answer to your question, okay? And I haven't even gotten yet to the divine masculine, okay? But what I just want to give people a sense, I want them to just sit and relax and feel into the timeline of all this. Because sometimes when you're looking at things in the moment, you get so overwhelmed by the chaoticness of everything that you can't see that there's this beautiful, very well orchestrated thing going on right now, and it's allowing us to to focus on the things that we desire to focus on, and maybe not always necessarily by intent the most attractive things, but it allows us to not get in the way of this other thing. That's the big thing. This other thing is moving, and we're not getting in the way. Okay, because if we were somehow responsible for all of this other energy coming in, we would get in our way. Okay, and nothing would get done. All right. So the one thing that I'm noticing about the divine femininity energies is that because we're still in 3D, and because we're still using 3D filters until we learn how to stop using 3D filters, a lot of divine femininity discussion tends to be on the emancipation of the divine feminine and the suppression of the divine feminine. And there was something else about that aspect too. There was all this discussion about it's the rightful time and place for the divine feminine energy to take its position. And it's kind of like, all right, almost like instead of an evolution, almost like a subtle revolution. Okay. And that's not what was intended, but it's the way that it's interpreted in 3D. Okay. And there's also other aspects of the divine feminine that is also being highlighted or exasperated, which is this part about sensuality. Sensuality has always been a big thing about the divine feminine, but it's always been part of a bigger discussion, of a distorted discussion around sexuality. And so you have now a lot of people who are remembering, who are going through the ascension process, but they're forgetting what the true nature of the divine feminine sensual energies are all about. And so they're filtering it and excuse me, and describing it as more sexual related. And so things like Tantra, the art of Tantra, and just the use of sensual energies as a form by which you alchemistically create are not being shown properly. Okay, so we're getting a lot of distortion there. So then here comes the divine masculine. All right, yay! Finally, the divine masculine. Thank you, Franco. Thank you for finally getting there. Okay, I have these conversations in my head all the time. Okay, so here's the thing. As much as there's been a lot of distortion around the feminine and child, if there's even been any discussion about the child, as much as there's been rightfully discussion about all of the stuff that has happened with the divine feminine up until now, and the distortions now that are coming through in some ways, not always, there is a big dynamic happening with the divine masculine even before it's come in. So I just I want to throw this out because up until recently, there has really not been a real clear presence of the divine masculine. And so what we have is the distorted masculine. But there are a lot of, and again, I'm going down the gender line, but this could apply to anybody who is operating from more of a divine masculine energy. So it could be women too. But so I'm just going to focus primarily here on the men. Okay. There are a lot of men, right? There's 49% of the world's population is men. Okay. There are a lot of men who all they're hearing right now is about the divine feminine and the role of the divine feminine. And they're not, because of the way that they've been raised, brought up culturally, religiously, whatever, they don't have a sense of how to bridge into those energies, even if they desire to. Okay. And if they start to bridge into those energies, they have all of these conflicting, let's just call them messages for now, of what their role should be, what it should look like in 3D, because to tap into your divine femininity would mean at the very least, at the very least, I'm going to go back. Now, there's a lot of frequencies that are attached to divine femininity, but I'm going to address one specifically, because this one seems to be the one that, again, seems to be, if nothing else, either the bridge that connects you from your 3D to your 4-5D energies, or it could be the hindrance to it. And that's the sensuality part. It's hard enough to describe to someone who's carrying the divine feminine energies how to use those energies to, in the process of creation, true creation, okay, manifestation creation, okay. It's even harder to explain to those who are carrying the divine masculine energy activations what to do with that, okay. Because again, sensuality is not in our culture, so to speak, our global culture, okay. It's treated as a, no touchy, no talky kind of a thing, okay. And so what's interesting is that there are these divine masculine energies coming in, which are softer in general, okay, and they are opening up new avenues for us to experience, and especially, again, men to experience some other aspect of themselves. And it touches on it complements on the divine feminine, and men are drawn to that, but they have nobody to look to, no way of feeling into that. So it's not surprising that men are not sure of what their role is supposed to be at this time, because those who are truly sensitive, which is a very divine feminine energy, those who are truly sensitive to their spirituality know that this is not the time anymore for men, okay, or the masculine, okay, to be leading the discussion, to be leading the momentum, the movement of spirituality. It is not the time. We were kind of talking a little bit about this off camera, as they would say, that most of the figureheads around spirituality, okay, if are men, okay, and a lot of them are still heavily rooted in religion and teach a lot of dogmatic things that are very old and antiquated.
Yeah.
And men who are becoming sensitive to their true spiritual Christ energies, if you will, Buddha energies, if you will, realize this isn't the time for a masculine or male representation of that. It's there, but it's not to be led, not to lead. Okay. So they're really confused. The masculine is really, really confused. And so it's not a surprise that the highest percentage of suicides are from men. By far. The older, the more likely that they will die by suicide, because there is such a disconnection now with what the role should be of a male. There's the traditional role, which does not compute anymore with the energies, but it's still forced on people. And then you have this new role, which hasn't been accepted yet, and in so many different ways. So, and the new role is that the male, not the male, but the masculine is there to be the one to support the insane amount of creative energy that is coming through the grid system, and provide a very balancing approach to the creation process, which is what the divine feminine does. The divine feminine is supposed to come here and resurrect the renaissance of creativity and consciousness. But that energy is so powerful and it is so impactful that, as I said already, you have to know as divine feminine how to use it and not abuse it either, because that's when it becomes distorted feminine. Okay, the masculine is supposed to ground all of that incredible, and I mean, this is like ancient intelligence that is coming in, and it is so insanely powerful that the masculine energies are supposed to be the ones that anchor themselves inside the grid system, hold that energy, and then distributes it softly in support of the creative energies that you would see in the divine feminine. That's where the balance truly occurs. But even if you were a male, and even if you were aware of that, which you're not, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's supporting that. And certainly nobody is really trying to be somewhat of a light post so people can learn and remember from that, which is now why you're starting to see a few things out there about the divine masculine, and it will become more prevalent. And ideally, it will support this balance that is occurring between the masculine and the feminine. Because again, statistically speaking, right now, men are not coping very well. They're at extraordinarily high levels of suicide. So, man, that was what? Only took me about 20 minutes to answer that one question. How many do we have? Woo! Let's go.
Yeah, no, but it's very, very profound, and I completely agree that it's the feminine who's leading and creating right now, and the masculine has to support, anchor that in the earth's grid, and ground it and manifest it in the 3D.
It
And,
is an go ahead, please. I apologize.
and create a container where feminine can feel safe and protected to
Boom, boom,
create.
boom, 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 boom. I love that. Create the container. That's see, divine feminine energies are so much better at articulating. That's the creative process, right? Provide the container, okay? Because I can only speak for myself, but I have been for some time now receiving an extraordinary amount of 5D energy, which has a lot of masculine energy in it. Now, it has a lot of masculine energy, but it has a lot of divine feminine energy. Just that the 5D energy is finally the energy that's introducing more masculinity, because the other energies haven't yet. And I can tell you, it is very ancient. And I want to keep stressing that it is, when I say ancient, I don't mean old in the sense of old. I mean ancient in the sense that it is deeply rooted in an intelligence that goes way, 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 way beyond what we even can conceive of here.
True.
And that energy is so powerful that your grid system, your own grid system, the container, your own container, cannot handle that energy. It would literally blow up. And I have seen this physically happen to myself and to others. If the divine masculine activation is set up to adjust to that energy, so that the container that you're talking about can be protected, can be safe. It can be safe from the inside out and from the outside in, because when the divine feminine energies begin to create, it attracts a lot of disruptive energy. And the reason for that is because it's like moths to light. It's a light energy that's so bright that everything is attracted to it.
Magnetic.
And it's very magnetic. And in the 3D level of things, it can be extraordinarily disruptive and extraordinarily corrupted. And that could mean anything from anything, you name it, sexually to everything, power to everything gets attracted to it. And so the divine masculine energies I often equate the divine masculine energies as the architecture of the reality. Okay. And so oftentimes people will say to me, and I feel like I represent all three energies pretty good now, but I do know that my function here at this time is to anchor a lot of this energy globally and geographically around the world, which is why I do a fair amount of traveling. And I can tell you that most people, when they have this sense of meeting me, they'll look and they'll say, "Gosh, I know you from somewhere. I know you deeply." And I tell them that, and I tell this genuinely, okay? Like, this isn't anything special to me, but I tell them that what they see is there's different things that they see, but what they truly see is the field. I represent the field, the architecture of this reality, and if you can see that, then you are seeing beyond the illusion of the game, and that's a good thing. Okay, so anyway, ideally, I kind of gave you a flavor for this balance and how it's right now. There's nothing really there anchoring it with anybody, because what's there still is a lot of distortion around the masculine role. But as you can see, the distorted masculine role is on its way out. It may look like it's doing a lot of things to disrupt 3D, and this was all prophesized, that when the day would come when all of these energies would come in to change the reality, the game that we're in, that the old institutions, the old energies of the masculine, distorted masculine and distorted feminine, would go bye-bye, and they will do everything they can to hold on to that power. But that's ending. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you.
So while this is meant to happen collectively, and we are still in the process, and there is a huge download or coming through of both the divine masculine as well as divine feminine. What is happening right now, because the divine feminine is leading the ascension and creating or co-creating the new earth, the divine masculine, because they are still distorted, wounded masculines, they are taking time to awaken. And the distorted, wounded masculine is typically aggressive, insecure, the one who goes or one who doesn't feel comfortable expressing emotions and feelings, and so on and so forth. So what is the karmic purification path for the divine masculine to come out of this wounding and distorted patterns, to first awaken and then ascend?
Okay. All right. I mean, I'll try to make this one a much shorter answer. Okay. I don't really feel that there's much of a difference between the process that a divine, that the masculine, distorted masculine, and the distorted feminine have to go through. I really feel the process is pretty much the same, and this is where the child energies come in. Okay, we have to understand some pretty simple principles, and it's not the understanding. Understanding's easy. It's the acceptance of them. Okay, and you and I've talked about this before, and I'm a real big supporter of this. Okay, is that we are all divine beings. Okay, which means, and everybody talks about this in some way in the spiritual realms, we're divine beings, but there's this sense that there's divine beings, and then there's this thing called source, God, the creator, the divine intelligence, and that there's some sort of big gap there. Okay, when I say it in its most simplest fashion. Okay, divine child, we're divine beings in the 3D world. That would be viewed as God. Okay, we're divine gods or God. Okay, because we all come together collectively. So to me, the recognition that we go through is that we stop looking out there, out there, out there for some type of solution or some sort of clarification. We have to go inward to do that. And people, well, yeah, I hear that, but that means a lot of meditation. It means this, I don't know, blah, blah. No, it just means simply, divine child here, simply playing with the idea that we are divine beings, that we are gods. Okay. And just playing, not saying you have to go and put up a sign up on the corner of a street and say, I'm God now, speak to me. Okay. I'm just simply saying, play with the idea that maybe, just maybe, everything you've been taught to believe is just the opposite of the truth. And maybe, just maybe, that means that at least in this particular case, it's okay to at least pretend that you're the divine. Okay. And if you could start to play with that notion of what that feels like to be the divine without letting certain frequencies that people talk about, like, you know, I'm not a big fan of throwing the ego under the bus. Okay. But people go, that's your ego. That's this, that's narcissistic, that's self-centered, that's conceited, blah, 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 all that. There's some truth to that. Okay. But not at the level that we're talking about. It's the simplicity of allowing yourself to feel that maybe, just maybe, you are perfect. You came into this world perfect, and you are playing the game of feeling what it's like not to be perfect and being told that you're not perfect, to remember that you are perfect. So if you could allow yourself to play with these simple concepts, okay, that allow you to remember a softness of who you are. Because when you start to feel into it that way, from a gentle space, not a space of arrogance, okay, but a space here where you're feeling like softness, like going back to a child and going, I am perfect. I am perfect. But perfect because why wouldn't I be perfect? Why would I not be? And allowing yourself to feel into then using more of the, again, this is not rocket science, using the pure character frequencies of the feminine and masculine child to help support that perfection. There's it right there. See, karma to me is not about bringing energies, wounded energies from prior experiences of life. To me, it's the process by which we, in the time that we're inside the mother's womb, we collect all of this energy in order to help us to remember how to play in this game of contrast. Okay, we develop our own identity in that time. So to me, I teach about this. I do quite a bit of discussion about and teaching about this in my courses, that karma is just another way of looking at empathy, and how we have used karma as a way to, and the way that it's been defined. Because if you really go back into the early teachings of karma, it's different the way that it was described, but in the way that it's been interpreted by many others who have led the way. Again, distorted energies. I won't say which kind. I'll leave it up to people to decide. Karma is viewed as a way to hold us back, and keep us conditioned to believe that we're here to fix something that was never broken. And so the easiest way to fix something that's never been broken is to start with the fact that if it's not broken, then it was perfect to begin with. So if you just can take that approach and start from there, it opens up. You say, okay, what do you do with it after that? What we don't understand is that when we start taking those approaches, we start to activate remembrances. More and more frequencies start to pop, and you will start to remember more what it means to be perfect in a divine way versus perfect in a distorted way. Does that make sense? So it's really a simple process. But
Yeah.
it's that simplicity that throws people off. That's all. See, that was simpler. I did that so much. So I did that, what, in about 3 minutes or 5 minutes versus the 20 minutes I just did that first question. So,
Yeah. The latest guidance that we have received in 2025 is that there is a lot of discussion, in fact, that divine counterparts are going to replace the twin flames. And twin flames came here to break the societal templates till 2024. And for those who don't know what twin flames are, I'm just going to explain in simple terms that twin flame are one soul split into two bodies, or two souls of exact four soul frequency. Also, there is a hypothesis that when everything got created, the divine masculine and the divine feminine were created in pairs. So essentially, till 2024, there was a lot of work to be done for ascension, and that's why the twin flames came. But now the 2025 guidance is that it's not necessary that the divine union will be the twin flame union. It might be that the divine masculine or feminine, one of them, but more so, the understanding is if the masculine doesn't keep the soul contract or doesn't do the inner work and chooses some other path, then the divine feminine, who's already ascended, will get a vibrational match in the form of divine counterpart, and that will be the highest vibration union. So, what's your understanding about this?
wow. Uh, okay. So again, these are fascinating questions, and I knew going into this discussion with you that you would be rich and ready to have these discussions, because they're coming from a different lens, a different perspective of the same energy, and so and I feel like that might be in part because of the influences of the culture and the texture of the religions in your neck of the woods. I just feel that. I mean, and because I don't always get that kind of perspective in some of the interviews that I do other parts of the world. So I have to sit here and I almost enjoy just listening to your question. I just sit there and go, and I'm going, and then I remember, wait a minute, I have to answer this somehow. So I'm like, okay, all right. So because they're so rich, they're so meaningful in so many different levels.
Thank you.
I'm going to say it this way because I'm not. I want to be clear that, and you can help me with this a little bit, that we might not be talking about the. I want to be sure that we're talking about the exact same frequency thing. Okay. Just as there has been distortion and confusion about the feminine and the masculine and the child and all of that stuff, there's been a real huge distortion around twin flames. And so for the longest time, I really had a hard time listening to anybody. And I'm going to be honest, listening to people, especially in more of the Western world, talk about twin flames, because it became a real great piece for marketing, right? It became this new way in which to view relationships, and how to enhance your relationship, attract your relationships, fix your relationships, all this kind of stuff. Okay. And so for the longest time, I don't know how it is in your end of the world, but on this end of the world, twin flames have often been associated with really the romance of the 3D romance. Okay. And it's gotten so much like that it got that the true genuine genuine reason for the twin flame was lost. Which is perfectly how the game, the simulated game, does things. It doesn't make it obvious to people, otherwise the game would end too quickly. So it makes distortions out of them, not to hurt, but just to make it more challenging. Okay. And so you hit it right on you hit the nail right on the head when you said, what was the true nature of the twin flame. Okay. And I forget exactly how you said it, but I'll try to do it in my simple way. And to me, I've always said that the twin flame was this union of two aspects of yourself, okay, that would remember and would desire to form that union again here in 3D to finish the game. Okay, this was about, it did not necessarily have to do with a romantic reunion, because in the world that we come from, the spiritual world, the spirit realms, okay, there is no such thing as romance the way that we talk about it here. There are no husbands and wives and none of that kind of stuff. Okay, the marriage does not exist in anywhere close to what we define it here. Okay, there are unions. Yes, there are many unions of soulmates. Okay, which are all clusters of energy within the energetic grouping of what you are, which is, the splitting up of yourself into many different layers. Okay, and so there's a family there. Okay, so I always used to say, even way back early on, that there was no such thing as a soul. Before there was this big thing about twin flames, it was about the soulmate. Find my soulmate. Find my soulmate. Okay, and I remember when I was much younger, I used to say, no, that doesn't make sense, that there would be one soulmate. There would be many soulmates, but I couldn't really explain it, and I certainly wasn't going to tell anybody, because they would all, that was like, how dare you say there's more than one soulmate, But as time went on, we developed a much better understanding of what soulmates are, and then all of a sudden, the recognition of this one union called the twin flame started to really surface. Okay, and then it got started. Okay, so what happened is that it was still what is applicable, is that the twin flame is the reunion of the original split of that particular essence, that energy of yourself as the divine. Okay, and that part of the fun of remembering, and part of the fun of getting to the point of mastering this game and getting through the ascension process, because these are not metaphors. I've explained why this is a simulated reality. Okay, that it's kind of like when you're playing a digital or virtual game, or even maybe a board game, where oh yeah, okay, so it's like when I was just given this vision. It's like, have you ever played checkers? Okay, so I mean, most people love to play chess. Some people play checkers, but when you could get to the other side of the board, you actually get to put another layer on top of you, and then your checkered piece gets to be even stronger, better, sort of thing. Or in chess, you can change your pawn into something else once you get to a certain point in the game. Okay, so that's what this is like. It's like, now you get to bring another aspect of yourself together, and together you amplify the energies around you, because now the energies are even more balanced, and it creates an opportunity for you to ascend faster, and to allow the grid to activate faster, and raise the boats faster. So it's like buddying up with somebody and being able to go, yeah, now 2 is better than 1. Let's go, right? And so what has happened, and so first and foremost, that is not that is not the common interpretation of twin flames. Okay. It does not have to be about romance. So you can find a complement to yourself that maybe gender wise is opposite, but you're not romantically involved, but you are typically developing the most incredible friendship that you've ever had in your entire life. Okay. Like it is the most loving friendship ever. Okay. And then together you start to activate each other and go through the process of remembering, and the game gets really exciting and things start to shake really fast. Okay. Now, in some cases, I have said to people that, and leave it to the divine masculine to be the one that doesn't follow the contract. Okay. No, but most of the time, the divine masculine and the divine feminine understand that this can play out in different ways. So the more common way is that we'll play, reunion. Okay. But there is, I've mentioned to people that you do not have to necessarily even go that far. If you desire to find your soul, your twin flame that way, beautiful. That's one of the more common ways of doing it. But within yourself, you have the ability to activate both the divine masculine and feminine and child energies, so that you can take on all of it yourself. Okay. And that would be another way in which you can do that. Now, I don't know if that is, I heard you saying it that way, but I know there's this counter piece, and I'm not sure if that counter piece is something else, but I'm just telling you, there's different ways now that you can do it by activating through either a reunion or within you, the activation of the full grid within you, which is that to say that you are both masculine, feminine, and child, and you can do it and you can play it out that way. So that's my take on all that.
Okay. Yeah.
Was that kind of what you were trying to explore? Is that kind of fit with what you're what you're seeing or viewing, or is that different than what other people are saying? I don't know what other people are saying. So
Okay. Yeah. So there are many different views. The downloads that I have been receiving since the beginning of 2025 is that, and I'm talking about external union, not just internal union.
okay.
And we'll come to internal union of masculine and feminine. But as far as the external union is considered, twin flames are born with polarities, and they trigger each other because they are mirrors of each other. And that is the purpose of twin flames, that to work through the polarities and break the templates, the societal templates.
Yep.
And work on the shadows and the triggers, and remember your soul and bring in more of your higher self within.
Yeah, and all of that is true. That's why that union, whether it's external or internal, but primarily external, why that union is so important, because when the union occurs again is when you activate the highest level of God, what's called God consciousness. And what that means is that the full union of the two becomes the union of the three, which is the divine masculine, feminine, and child. That's when all three come together. It's kind of like, like the birds and the bees, but except in energetic language, you're bringing the masculine and feminine together, and through that reunion, they ignite the divine child. And that divine child and the trinity of the three unions of the three creates the God consciousness, which is what I was telling you earlier, which is this incredible intelligence that is ancient. And that is what is coming into the grid system and blowing up all of what you said, the structure, the 3D structure that's there, because it's that powerful. But it requires that trinity through the original union. So yeah, I agree with all of that.
You're doing such an amazing work, and how can people connect with you?
Thank you for asking. Very simple. I have established a couple of ways in which to connect with people. One is I have a website that goes through a lot of what we've been talking about here, discussing topics of all types. That's francoromero.com. And also you can get information about the courses that I teach there, as well as access to the book and my new books that are coming out soon. So that's one place to reach out to me. The other one is a community that I've created for people to be able to share with each other their experiences. And it's a really wonderful place to meet up with your soulmates, okay? And maybe even potentially a twin flame. So, but it's designed for you to be heard. That's the big thing. That's the big thing. And so that's playground.francoromero.com. One of those two places would be the easiest way to reach out to me. Okay.
Okay, sure. We'll give all the links in the video description. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening in wherever you are in the world. As Ramdas says, that we all are just walking each other home. So thank you for co-creating the new earth along with me and our guests. And if you resonate with me, do subscribe to my channel and do let us know how you find our episodes. Thank you so much. Lots of love.